Hi, this is Vivian Vande Velde coming to you during this time of all of us being confined to our homes. I hope you are all doing well and in the mood to hear more of Ghost of a Hanged Man, written by me, published by Marshall Cavendish. I am reading one chapter a day, and you have tuned in for chapter 5. This is chapter 5 of 15, and it is called Xandra. I figured Annabelle was cold and wet enough, even though she wouldn't admit it, that I better get her home. Elijah was still hoping for someone to drop one of the coffins and have it split open, so he decided to stay a bit longer. I had my hat pulled down to protect my eyes from the stinging rain, and I was holding on to Annabelle because we were facing into the wind and she was having trouble making headway when we walked smack into someone. I had a brief impression of someone about Annabelle's height and of bright colored skirts and bare feet. And then the person was falling off the wooden planks of the sidewalk and into the mud of the street. She yelled something in some foreign language I didn't understand, then switched to English. Idiot! Clumsy fool! It was the Tinker Girl I'd seen last month in Pickett's general store. Sorry, I said, even though she'd been half running, with the wind pushing at her back. She had walked into me just as surely as I had walked into her. I reached down to give the girl a hand up, but she slapped my arm away. Still, when she tried to stand, her feet slid out from under her, and she landed, once again, bottom first in the mud. The second time I offered my hand, she took it. Why don't you have a coat? Annabelle asked her, because the girl wore only a shawl. I smacked Annabelle's arm, figuring the girl's family was probably too poor to buy her a coat. I saw no call to be making her feel bad on account of her people being poor. But tactful Annabelle continued, and it's too cold for bare feet. I smacked Annabelle a second time. What? She demanded. The girl tossed her long black hair over her shoulder, revealing bright earrings. I was doing fine until you knocked me into that river that passes for a street in this town of yours, she said. She wasn't doing fine now. Her teeth were chattering. Is your family nearby? I asked. Yes, of course. They're sitting right here on the sidewalk. Can't you see them? I felt my cheeks go red with embarrassment. I meant, do you have anybody here who can bring you back? Home didn't seem right. Someplace dry? The girl sniffed, more cold than upset, I judged. My papa and my uncle are seeing about selling some horses. We're getting ready to break camp before the river floods where we are, and I was just sightseeing one last time in this lovely little swamp of yours when you flung me into the mud. She was older than Annabelle, I decided, judging by her biting sarcasm, probably closer to my age, despite her small size. I considered just apologizing again, or not, and leaving her there, but I felt responsible. Not as responsible as she wanted me to feel, but responsible. Our pa's office is just 2 doors down, I said. You're welcome to come in and dry yourself off by the stove. That would be good for both her and Annabelle. She hesitated, probably trying to think of a witty response, but the wind swirled around for a second just then, blowing at least half a bucketful of rain off the roof and onto us, and she nodded. Inside pa's office, her dark eyes got big at the sight of the jail cells, empty at the moment, and she said, Your papa must be the sheriff. The sign over the door said that, so she must not have been able to read. I pinched Annabelle's arm before she could say anything, and I just said, Yes. Then I said, My name's Ben Springer, and this is my sister, Annabelle. I'm Xandra, the girl said. What kind of name is that? Annabelle demanded as she and I took off our coats. It's a princess's name, our guest said. Her bare feet tracked wet, dirty footprints from the door to the stove, where she turned her back and raised her skirt to dry the backside of her underskirts, which was just about the most unprincess-like thing I'd ever seen, but I didn't say so. She shook her skirts to unstick them from her legs, and something fell from a pocket, a small package, wrapped in a scrap of red cloth. I leaned down at the same time Xandra did, and our heads cracked together. Yow! I said, rubbing my head. Xandra snarled at me in her foreign language again, and Annabelle reached in to pick up the package. The cloth came loose, and pieces of paperboard fell from Annabelle's hand. That was the cuckoo clock. Playing cards, Annabelle cried in delight. I could just guess she was about to suggest playing Old Maid, which was her favorite game, because she always won, because she always cheated. But as Sandra was saying, "You aren't supposed to touch those." At the same time, Annabelle took a closer look and said, disappointed, "Not playing cards." I got a brief glimpse of strange, bright colored pictures before Xandra grabbed the remaining cards from Annabelle's hand, then swooped down and scooped up the ones off the floor. "How can you play cards if you can't touch them?" Annabelle demanded, as Xandra rewrapped them in the piece of red silk. "They're not cards to play with," Xandra said, "and I can touch them. You can't." "What's the use of touching them if you can't play with them?" Annabelle asked, obviously pleased with her own logic. "They're for telling fortunes," Xandra said. I was too polite to scoff, though maybe I should have, because Annabelle believed her. "You can tell fortunes?" she asked, wonder in her voice. Then, before Xandra could finish saying yes, Annabelle said, "Can you tell my fortune?" "Are you willing to pay?" Xandra asked. "Yes," Annabelle said. At the same time, I said, "No." Annabelle dug into her pocket and came up empty-handed. Naturally, she turned to me. "Oh, please, Ben," she begged. "It'll be fun. Please, please." Xandra was watching me with an expression that said she knew I was too cheap. It was her certainty that made me say, "How much?" "A penny." I figured a penny was worth it to keep Annabelle from jumping up and down, so I handed Xandra a penny. She moved to Pa's desk and sat down in his chair, wet skirts and all. Annabelle and I moved in behind her to look over her shoulder. That was chapter 5 of Ghost of a Hanged Man. Tune in tomorrow to hear chapter 6. Hope you enjoyed it. And meanwhile, stay safe and be kind.